are here at the Holocaust Memorial on Miami Beach to bring to you a very special program called Names, Not Numbers. Hello, I'm Glenna Milberg. This is a documentary researched and produced by Miami-Dade students and Holocaust survivors right here in South Florida. Names, Not Numbers is a nationwide curriculum that immerses students firsthand into documenting the horrors of the Holocaust. And along the way, they learn some very relevant real-life lessons. Local 10 is proud to bring you this program, and we thank you for watching.
The following program is a presentation of the Interfaith Broadcasting Commission.
Center of everything about the Holocaust Memorial. This iconic place on Miami Beach was actually very instrumental in bringing the Names Not Numbers project to Miami-Dade. And for a behind-the-scenes look at that, we want to introduce you to three people who are involved.
We knew about the Names Not Numbers program. It had come across our desk, and we thought this is something that we should be doing in the public schools.
This history is overwhelming, demanding, challenges the senses and faith in humanity.
As a public school English teacher, our time is very limited, right? It's very hectic all day long. And to do a project like this, we went in knowing it was going to be several hundred hours of work and research and interview and etc. And I basically asked my ninth graders. I had a sharp group of about 60 ninth graders, and I explained to them what it was going to be. And 20 kids raised their hand. And because I wasn't sure I wanted to do it until I put that question to the kids. But
what was the hesitancy? Why not?
Just, the amount of additional labor that was going to be involved in it, but also, could we pull it off? I didn't want to start a great big project like this and then not see it out to its fruition.
And so began a journey that required commitment, courage, the kind of journey students won't find in a textbook.
They are involved in the process from A to Z, from handling the cameras to handling the sound, learning how to interview, doing background information.
What is it about this curriculum that you thought was different from the things you're doing already?
A couple of things. One is that, let me start off by this. We have a group of Holocaust survivors that volunteer at the memorial. And I would say this, one of the things that compels them or that moves them, they know that their time is limited. And they want to make sure that the next generation is able to tell their story. So we came across this program, and we knew we wanted to do more things in the public schools. And we said, this is a beautiful program to bring to different public schools to, I would say, to bring a universal message. Because the story of the Holocaust, while it is a Jewish story, it's one of the worst and most tragic events in world history.
That tragic history is family history for Jonathan Taman, now a junior at Miami Beach High School, who was on the project with his brother. In their family, almost 100 relatives were murdered. Their grandmother survived. In 1944, she was 16, Jonathan's age now, when she and her family were taken in the sweeps across Hungary and transported to ghettos and ultimately to Auschwitz. The concept of someone who's survived that sort of horror, you grew up with.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, my mom didn't really mention the Holocaust or my own connection with it until I was about 13 or 14, and then she really laid everything out.
And how did that change your perception of your family?
Well, it's pretty impactful, and hearing about the stories and how a whole portion of my family tree is just forgotten, and I'll never really be able to know where they went or who they are just because of what happened.
Miami-Dade County Public Schools has a very diverse student body.
They do.
Some of them approaching the subject of the Holocaust for the first time.
This curriculum did really shape a lot. There was a lot of pieces to this, as you mentioned, there's like technical aspects to it, and learning how to use the camera, and learning how to develop questions, and then talking to people. And I look for those real world kind of learning experiences.
Yeah.
And you hope that students will take an experience like that and a subject like the study of the Holocaust or the study of human rights and be serious about it.
You were such an integral part of this documentary, and now you're 2 years removed from it. So give me that sort of 2 years later perspective of a now junior in high school on what you did.
Well, I mean, looking back on it, it was an amazing experience being able to interview local Holocaust survivors, and it also showed me a lot about how people treat the Holocaust or know about it. I mean, most of my classmates didn't know that much about the Holocaust and then learned a lot after.
Did that surprise you?
Not really, because it's not something that we talk about in school. We've never really discussed the Holocaust, and we don't spend that much time about it. Mr. Reese is like the first that I ever heard talk about it.
How have these students changed, have you noticed?
Well, I heard from some that I spoke to about the fact that this film was going to air, and they told me, this was a life-changing event for me. And we didn't specify exactly how, but there's something I think in talking to people that enriches your understanding of things. You see an emotion, it's somehow tangible.
You have a connection.
You have this connection as
Yeah.
opposed to, notice what we always say, but it's different than a history book, or it's different than watching it on film to hear the survivors speak, or to hear anybody speak for that matter. There's an emotional investment. And I think a lot of kids don't get that emotional investment with adults or people of the next generation. And I think if we're going to make, these stories last, and if we're going to have people to remember them, we do need to have them emotionally invested in it.
The emotional investment challenges different students in different ways, and as they go deeper, they find humanity among the heartache.
During the Holocaust, there were people like Nicholas Winton is someone who I learned about who saved hundreds of children from Czechoslovakia before the outbreak of the war. So there are plenty of things that we can learn about the bad and the good people during the Holocaust that we can apply today.
Holocaust history, stories, documentation is ongoing globally, though one-to-one first-hand connection to someone who came through it is an unmatched experience.
There's something I think in talking to people that enriches your understanding of things. You see an emotion, it's somehow tangible.
Meeting a survivor and conducting that intimate interview, long-term, a long-form interview, hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, with the survivor, and then having to go through the footage and edit it. And you see this process of not only the survivor telling their story and passing on their message to the next generation, but you have a new generation of students who, when they become adults, won't forget this experience, and they'll be able to tell their story, their survivor story.
The students can become the teachers.
But I also learned about the actual survivors. Like, even though they witnessed all those horrible things, they're still good, amazing people that are just interesting to get to know. They've mentioned that a few times about how we're the next generation to carry on the first-hand witnesses.
Did you get a sense that they were really unnerved by thinking their generation is going to be gone and they will be forgotten? Did you get that sense?
No, I think they were proud in us that we actually cared about their story and care enough to spread it and still remember it and learn from it.
Their greatest fear is that when they're gone, nobody will remember and be able to tell their story. And more than that, with the growth of Holocaust denial, that people will think it really didn't happen.
And
So-
we are at that generation.
And right. So here you have a program that goes into the public schools to our diverse community and brings a universal message as well, that this example, their story of the hate and the bigotry and the prejudice and the horror that they faced and they survived
I've struggled a lot of times in listening to people's stories. I've been hearing from Holocaust survivors for some time, and I have to say, when I enter into this unit, and I've done it for 10, 12 years, it does kind of take me to a place of, I don't know, solitude or something that there's a value to it. And then I go look at my own kids, my 7-year-old, my 9-year-old, after doing something like this, and there's a that kiss goodnight or that welcome home is sort of an extra special type of thing at that moment.
Can you apply the things that you've seen and heard and learned to a much more modern time?
Yes, definitely. I think there are a lot of things that I've learned about during the Holocaust, that like all these things that happened that were leading up to World War II and the Holocaust that the Nazis did are all things that we can find here in the modern times.
Like what? Tell me about that.
Well, all the racism and discrimination or hate towards other people and just treating other ethnicities as others, they're all things that happened whenever 80 years ago. So it's all stuff that's just repeating.
Do you think that the world has not learned a lesson yet?
I don't think so. No, I think we still have a duty to spread information about the Holocaust and point out how things are repeating.
That critical connection may be the most important legacy of projects like Names Not Numbers for students in South Florida and beyond.
In the words of Joe Sachs, who's one of the survivors that is in a Names Not Numbers documentary, he passed away recently, but his message was, make the world a better place. And that's what the memorial is trying to do with this program. Go into the schools and get a new generation of students
To make the world a better place.
the world a better place.
We want to thank the Miami-Dade students and teachers and guides for sharing their work with us. We want to thank you for joining us. For all of us here at Local 10, I'm Glenna Milberg.
Come on, let's go.